Hey everyone, we often think of history as this solid block of facts, right? But really, it's a collection of powerful stories. And some of those stories are so compelling, they literally shape the way we see the world. So, what happens when some of the best stories, the ones we all know, turn out to be, well, not quite true? Okay, let's dive in, starting with one of history's most chilling tales. Picture this, a 3,000-year-old tomb, and supposedly carved right at the entrance are these words, a stark warning. And let me tell you, the world was about to find out that for those who ignored it, the consequences were going to be swift and they were going to be deadly. Okay, so fast forward to 1923. It's only been a few months since they crack open King Tutankhamun's tomb, and the guy who paid for the whole thing, Lord Carnarvon, is in his hotel room in Cairo, and he is not doing well. He's got this raging fever. It all started with something so simple, a little insect bite on his cheek. But now it's gone septic, and at exactly 1:55 in the morning, he dies. And that's when the legend of the curse truly explodes. But Carnarvon's death, that was just the first domino to fall. I mean, look at this. A string of bizarre deaths just happens, one after another. A financier visits the tomb and bam, dies of a sudden fever. An Egyptian prince visits and he gets shot by his own wife. Years later, Carnarvon's secretary dies out of nowhere, and then his father throws himself from a 7-story window. You can just imagine the newspapers, right? With every single one of these strange deaths, the story just got bigger and bigger. The mummy's curse wasn't just a legend anymore. It felt terrifyingly real. Okay, but this is where it gets really spooky. These are the details that took a few tragic events and turned them into a full-blown ghost story. I mean, think about it. The entire power grid for Cairo goes out at the exact moment he dies. Come on. And then there's this. Howard Carter, the main archaeologist, had a pet canary, and it gets eaten by a cobra, the symbol of the Pharaohs. It's like a message, right? But this last one, this is the kicker. The mummy itself has a mark on its cheek in the exact same spot as Carnarvon's fatal bite. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. Or can you? So that's one heck of a story, right? A terrifying curse from an ancient pharaoh. But sometimes the truth behind the myth is even more fascinating. So let's pull back the curtain and see what's really going on here. All right, so let's just use a little logic here. If this curse was real, who would be the number one target? I mean, who should have been the first to go? Yeah, Howard Carter, the guy who physically broke the seal, the first person to step inside in thousands of years. And what happened to him? Nothing. He lived a long, full life for another 16 years, in fact. That one little fact, it starts to make the whole story look a little shaky, doesn't it? Okay, I'm just going to put a number up here, 73. What on earth could that mean? It seems totally random, but trust me, this number is the key. It's the stake through the heart of the mummy's curse. And here's why that number is so important. This is where a spooky story runs smack into cold, hard data. Researchers went back and looked at the 25 people who were actually there when the tomb was opened. And guess what their average age of death was? Yep, 73, which is actually higher than the average life expectancy for people in their social class back then. So if anything, the curse actually let them live longer. How wild is that? So if it's not a supernatural curse, then what was it? What made some of these people sick? Well, science has a much less spooky, but way more likely answer. Think about it. You seal up a room for 3,000 years. What's going to grow in there? All sorts of nasty stuff. Molds, fungi, you name it. And for a guy like Lord Carnarvon, who wasn't in the best health to begin with, breathing in a lungful of ancient toxic mold, that could absolutely be a death sentence. No magic required. And now, for the final nail in the coffin, the absolute bombshell. Remember that chilling inscription we started with, "Death shall come on swift wings"? Yeah, it was completely fake. It never existed. Not a single trace of it was found anywhere near the tomb. It was literally made up by a newspaper reporter who needed a juicy story to sell papers. He asked the archaeology team about curses, they kind of shrugged him off, and boom, he took their silence and invented one of history's most famous hoaxes. Okay, so taking apart the mummy's curse is a lot of fun, but there's a much bigger point here. It shows us that history isn't just a list of things that happened. It's about the stories we tell ourselves about what happened. And those stories, they have real power. And that's the question I want us to think about now. If a story as famous as the mummy's curse can be a complete fabrication, what does that mean for the other stories we hear? The ones about much more complicated, much more important events happening right now. All right, so let's put this idea to the test. We're going to move from a myth that's pretty easy to debunk to a situation where the truth is very much up for grabs, right now, today. So you've got two completely different stories about one of the most famous buildings in the world. On the one hand, you have the story we all know, the Taj Mahal, a breathtaking monument to love. But then you have this other, really controversial claim that it was actually a much older Hindu temple palace that was just taken over and repurposed. And look, this isn't just some dusty academic argument. This is a battle over a nation's soul. It's about identity, religion, and who gets to write the official story. Okay, for our last example, we're going even bigger. And honestly, this one is devastating. This is about how crafting the right story, the right narrative, didn't just change a country. It plunged the entire world into war. And it all starts right here, with the Treaty of Versailles. See, this treaty did more than just stop the fighting after World War I. It created a story. And the story it told was simple. Germany, and Germany alone, was guilty. It forced them to pay crushing amounts of money and accept total blame. It was humiliating, and it left the entire country feeling angry and resentful. And that resentment was like dry kindling, just waiting for a spark. And then along comes a master storyteller. Adolf Hitler saw all that pain and anger, and he crafted a new story to explain it. He told the German people, hey, you're suffering, it's not your fault. Just like with the mummy's curse, he took a complex reality and replaced it with a simple, powerful, and incredibly dangerous narrative. He told them they hadn't really lost the war, they were betrayed. He gave them scapegoats, he gave them villains, and he gave them a promise. Follow me, and I will make you great again. And this is where you see just how terrifyingly powerful a story can be, because this story of betrayal and promised glory wasn't just words. It became a reason to act. It was the justification for tearing up treaties, for rebuilding the army, for taking over other countries, and ultimately, it was the justification for invading Poland, which kicked off World War II. A story, a narrative, led directly to the deaths of tens of millions of people. It's chilling. So, from a fake curse and an ancient tomb to a world-altering war, we've seen again and again how a good story can be way more powerful than the actual facts. So the question is, how do we spot this? How do we protect ourselves from being manipulated by a powerful narrative? Well, it starts with not just accepting stories at face value. We need to become critical thinkers. So I want to leave you with a simple toolkit. Just 4 questions you can use for pretty much any story you hear, whether it's from history or on the news tonight. First, who's telling me this? What's their angle? Second, who wins if I believe this story? Third, what are the actual facts here? What's the proof beyond just how the story makes me feel? And maybe the most important one of all, what am I not being told? What's missing from this picture? So that's what I want to leave you with. I want you to think about the historical stories you just accept as fact. The ones you learned in school, the ones everyone seems to agree on. Are you sure they're the whole truth? Or are they just a really, really good story? Because being able to tell the difference, well, that might be one of the most important skills any of us can have. Thanks for joining me.